The sky over Chicago hung heavy under a sheet of dull grey clouds, and the glass tower of Apex Airlines Group reflected that dim light like a warning. Wind sliced through the steel gaps, carrying an unnatural cold, the kind of cold that made people feel something was about to break. The doors of the 42nd floor boardroom swung open, the sharp click echoing like metal striking metal. Everyone turned at once. Elias Turner walked in. No one expected him to appear. No one thought he would dare. And none of them knew that this very moment would decide the fate of an entire corporation. Time itself seemed to slow, as if an invisible camera glided over him, the charcoal grey suit, the navy tie, the razor-sharp lines that projected a kind of power that needed no introduction. But what froze the room was not his attire. It was his eyes, cold, like a thin sheet of ice, clear on the surface, but with a storm raging beneath it, ready to tear free at any second. Elias set his leather briefcase on the glass table. The heavy thud landed like a judge's gavel. A few board members blinked, some shifted in their seats. Unease spread through the room like invisible toxic smoke. Elias did not sit. He stood firm, and the pressure of his silence felt heavier than any words he could have spoken. "We have not officially met," he said, his voice, deep and steady, packed with a compressed force that could shatter glass if released all at once. Someone coughed, their voice cracking. He unzipped the briefcase, pulled out a file, and pushed it toward them. The folder slid across the tabletop with a sound sharp as a blade. "This is the report regarding the acquisition of Stratosphere Holdings." He paused for half a second. His eyes swept across each face, not to observe but to warn. The elderly chairman with silver hair tried to steady his voice, but the trembling still bled through. And what exactly are you proposing, Mr. Turner?" Elias's lips curved into a smile that never reached his eyes. "Not a proposal," he said, each word falling heavy like stones dropped into a dark lake. "This is a notification." The air fractured. The HR director placed a hand over her chest, as though her heartbeat had slipped out of rhythm. Elias lifted his left hand and adjusted the steel watch on his wrist, a habit he had whenever he was about to say something irreversible. 3 months ago, he continued, his voice, dropping, one of your flight attendants looked me in the face and told me I didn't belong in first class. The sentence cut through the air like a blade. Faces shifted, eyes darted, some recognizing the incident, but still unable to imagine that the man they insulted was the one standing before them now. Elias tilted his head slightly, his eyes narrowing. "Today I want to tell you the journey that started from that moment." He tapped his fingers on the glass surface, 1, 2, 3 each tap like a countdown. Then he exhaled, slow and deliberate. "Because that sentence," Elias paused, "was the reason your corporation collapsed." Someone swallowed hard, the sound loud in the silence. Then the screen cut to black. The scene snapped back to 3 months earlier. The camera raced across the Texas sky, through dry golden sunlight, and stopped above Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, where tens of thousands moved like synchronized links in a giant urban machine. Flashback. The voice of the airport PA system echoed. Luggage wheels clattered on polished floors. Cold air from the ventilation swept past crowds that flowed like schools of fish. Elias Turner pulled a plain black carry-on suitcase. No logo, no flair. Just the minimalism of a man who lived in a world where every detail mattered. He was 44 years old enough to stand at the peak of business, young enough to reshape an entire industry, and calm enough to hide the irritation behind the sharp glances thrown his way. They were not curious glances. They were judgmental, the kind of look successful black men had endured all their lives. He approached the Apex Air check-in counter for Flight 2910, first class, boarding group 1. The check-in agent did not look up. She simply extended a hand to take his ticket. "Have a pleasant flight, sir," she said, her tone mechanical. Elias nodded faintly. He had heard that line thousands of times, but he always noticed the difference in how it was delivered to him versus others. The camera followed him onto the plane. First class glowed under warm amber lights. Champagne-colored leather seats, legroom wide enough to feel like a private lounge. Elias placed his small briefcase under his seat and leaned back. He absorbed the space, the dim glow, the cool air, the scent of oak wood, freshly opened wine, and the expensive perfume of the executives behind him. Everything was perfect until the sound of heels stopped beside him. Slow, heavy, carrying an energy that said, "I am about to inconvenience you." Elias opened his eyes. Cara Simmons' 33 hair in a tight bun, cold red lipstick, and a stiff smile like a thin mask. "I need to recheck your ticket, sir." Her voice did not sound apologetic. It sounded accusatory. Elias handed her the ticket. She inspected every detail. Eyes down to the ticket, up to him, back down, then up again. A tiny sound, but filled with disdain. Elias remained silent. He had learned not to react to slow drip insults like this. Silence did not mean the blow did not land. A spark had already ignited somewhere deep in his chest. Cara nodded and returned the ticket, then walked away. The camera tracked her movement as she smiled brightly at a white passenger nearby, while completely ignoring Elias. 2 minutes later, she returned, this time with a new request. "Sir, may I see your ID?" Elias looked up. Something in his expression shifted, barely noticeable, like a still lake disturbed by a pebble. Reason, his tone was calm. "Routine check," she replied. But everyone could see it. No one else was being checked. Elias handed over his ID. She examined it far longer than necessary. In the row ahead, an older man in a crisp white shirt, initials RH embroidered on the cuff, glanced at Elias with an unreadable expression. Elias felt that look, that silent calculation, that evaluation of whether he belonged here. Another 2 minutes passed. The cabin door was about to close. Cara returned her face, tense in a way she tried to hide, but not well enough. "Sir, we have a system error. Your seat was assigned incorrectly. You will have to move to economy." The air froze. A jolt ran through Elias's spine, not from fear, but from the certainty of what this was. He looked around, noting 2 empty first-class seats. "I see available seats," he said. "Those are reserved for platinum passengers who may arrive late." Cara replied, her voice flat. "I am platinum." She did not change her expression. As she turned away, Thomas, the 35-year-old male flight attendant, stepped behind her like a barrier. "Sir, you need to comply with the crew's instructions," he said, voice metallic. Elias tightened his grip on the armrest. Memories of suspicion, scrutiny, and prejudice surged like waves. He refused to make a scene, not out of fear, but because he knew that in the eyes of others, a black man showing anger was always judged differently. He drew a slow breath, controlled, contained. "I will go," Elias said, his voice eerily calm. "But I will document this." Cara walked away, satisfied. Thomas stepped back, cold eyes following him. Elias picked up his bag, stood and walked down the narrow aisle. He heard a phone camera being raised behind him. Whispers followed. Humiliation burned up his neck like fire. The camera slowed, capturing each detail, the faint tremor in his hand, the sharpness in his eyes, the tightness of his breath. This was not just a seat loss. This was an insult, a slap to his dignity, a reminder that no matter how successful he was, some people still believed he did not belong. He sat in economy, squeezed into a middle seat between two large men. The space was so tight he had to angle his shoulders to breathe. He could see Kara ahead, laughing with Richard Hale, the man in seat 3C, chatting like equals. None of them knew they were disrespecting a billionaire, controlling assets worth $30 billion a man, fully capable of buying the parent company of this airline if he wished. And he would. Elias stared straight ahead, his gaze no longer cold. It was burning, a plan formed, sparked by the ember of humiliation. This would not end here. Outside the window, the sky shifted into a blazing shade of orange and red, as if the sunset itself was burning with him. Night fell over San Francisco, like a curtain of cold velvet. The towering glass buildings reflected the city lights, shimmering in a way that was beautiful, yet indifferent, just like the system Elias was about to confront. The 47th floor of the hotel where he was staying was so quiet, he could hear the wind brushing against the windows. Elias stood alone before the massive glass wall. Beneath him, the entire city flowed in winding rivers of light. To the left, the Bay Bridge stretched across the water like a curved steel blade. But he was not looking at the view. He was looking into memory. Memory of Kara Simmons's contemptuous eyes. Memory of the voice that said he did not belong in first class. Memory of being pushed into a cramped metal box, of a seat wedged between strangers who watched him with silent pity. Small things to some, but to Elias, they scraped across a wound he knew too well. He lifted his phone. His voice was calm, cold, sharp, like a freshly honed blade. "Jason, I need everything on Stratosphere Holdings, as detailed as possible. Financials, shareholders, internal culture, lawsuits, everything, before sunrise." The line paused for a beat. Then, "Yes, I will activate the entire team." Elias ended the call. Silence returned. But this time, it was not the silence of someone hurt. It was the silence of someone preparing to strike back. He opened his laptop and began reading. Page after page appeared lawsuits, buried out of sight complaints, silenced PR campaigns, masking a corporate culture rotting with discrimination. Anonymous posts from employees describing being judged because of their skin color, denied promotions because they were not a cultural fit. The more he read, the sharper his eyes became. This is not random, he thought. It is a pattern, a system that needed to fall. The midnight meeting. The door opened softly. Jason Chen entered first. Behind him came Maya Patel, her voice as sharp as legal steel, and Derek Foster, the man who understood the heartbeat of the stock market. Lucas, the youngest analyst, hurried in, clutching his laptop, as if it were his lifeline. They placed documents on the table. The room glowed in a wash of blue light from their screens. Jason began, "Stratosphere's parent company is weaker than it looks. Cash flow is tight. Profit has dropped for 3 consecutive quarters. Customer satisfaction is the lowest in the industry." He pressed a button. The graph plunged like a plane losing altitude. Maya continued, her voice clear and unwavering. "We found at least 8 lawsuits involving racial discrimination. All settled quietly. No corrective action. Elias said nothing, but his shoulders rose slightly, a sign his anger was condensing into something sharper. Derek handed him another folder. Major shareholders are unhappy with Chief Executive Officer Richard Hale. They do not believe in his strategy anymore. They are only missing someone strong enough to lead the shift. That name, Richard Hale, made Elias's eyes freeze for a fraction of a second. He remembered the face. Seat 3C. The embroidered initials, RH. The indifferent look he gave while Elias was being humiliated. Elias closed his eyes briefly, not to forget, but to carve the moment deeper. The decision. Elias stood and paced around the table. Stratosphere's situation, he said slowly, is not a problem. It is an opportunity. Jason blinked. You mean Elias stopped, turned, and looked directly at them? I will buy it. No one breathed. No one moved. Maya tightened her grip on her pen. You are talking about one of the 3 largest airline groups. I know exactly what I am talking about. Elias cut in his voice, frighteningly calm. And I know exactly what needs to be done. Lucas stammered. But the Securities and Exchange Commission, the disclosures, they will know the moment you start accumulating. Shano Elias cut in again. We do it in the dark. Break the trades apart. Use multiple entities. No patterns and no visibility. Derek nodded slowly. If executed correctly, they will only realize it when it is too late. Elias looked out the window again. The city lights reflected in his eyes, 2 fierce, determined points of fire. We are not just taking over Stratosphere, he said. We are rebuilding how they treat human beings. He placed his hand on the table, his voice lowering to a near growl. I do not accept a system that thinks a person's worth can be defined by their skin color. The campaign begins. Jason opened his laptop. Maya took notes. Derek called the trading division. Lucas began coding an algorithm to divide the acquisition orders. The entire room transformed into a battlefield. No conversation, only the clatter of keys, the clicking of mice, the rustle of paper. Elias stood at the center, not commanding but driving the rhythm. The lights reflected across his face, highlighting the silence of a man preparing to break an empire. Near dawn, the streetlights outside shifted from gold to pale white. The city began to stir awake. Elias stepped onto the balcony. The cold wind against his face cleared his mind, sharpened it. He remembered the moment Kara looked him up and down, the moment her voice dropped those words. You do not belong in first class. He closed his fist, not from anger, but from vision. If no one fixed this system, thousands more would suffer what he suffered. He opened his phone and sent a message to the entire team. Day 1. No retreat. Then he stood there, letting the cold wind sweep through him, letting the rage transform into purpose. In the sky above, an Apex Airlines plane sliced through the air like a silver arrow. Elias watched it. This time, not with sadness or anger, but with a silent promise, I will bring you down from the sky so I can rebuild you the right way. Dawn poured into the Titan Capital war room like liquid gold sweeping across faces, still carrying traces of a sleepless night. Screens still glowed, papers still lay open, coffee still steamed. No one was tired, no one complained. Everyone in this room understood that they had just stepped into a war. No one else dared to start, except Elias Turner. Jason Chen placed a small USB drive on the glass table, his fingers trembling slightly, because what he was about to reveal was not just information, it was the surgical blueprint for toppling an empire. Elias stepped closer, the light cutting across his face, sharpening the line of his nose and jaw like steel carved by hand. Jason plugged in the drive and opened the detailed structural map of Stratosphere Holdings. The diagram emerged like a giant octopus, dozens of subsidiaries, layers upon layers of authority control branches, tangled together like the neural system of a creature too massive to understand at a glance. "If we want to control Stratosphere," Jason said, voice tight, "we have to go around it. A direct hit will alert the board immediately." Elias did not question. He simply spoke one word, soft but sharp: weakness. Jason tapped a red dot on the screen. Institutional shareholders. 3 major investors have lost patience with Richard Hale. They are waiting for someone strong enough to lead the shift. Elias nodded so subtly, yet enough to make the whole room sit straighter. "We start with them." Less than 3 hours later, Elias walked into the glass conference room at BlackRock in New York. The air was so cold, even breaths felt sharp. Across from him, Jordan Ellis, 52 years old, a man with unreadable grey eyes, flipped through the file Elias handed over. The silence stretched long enough that they could hear the pen pressing against the table. Finally, Jordan spoke. "You really want to step into the aviation industry. It is not a field for outsiders." Elias looked straight at him, his gaze steady, fearless, unwavering. "Injustice does not belong to any industry. I am not here to intrude. I am here to repair." Jordan's brow tightened. Elias continued, his voice slow but heavy, like the strike of a hammer. "They have strong assets, but a rotten culture. I will fix that. And you want profit. Those 2 goals meet right here." Elias placed a hand on the file. "A new Stratosphere, clean and transparent, will be worth far more than it is today." Jordan studied him for 3 long seconds, then stood and extended his hand. "Call me when you are ready. I will vote." The moment their hands clasped, the war officially began. A few days later, Titan Capital gathered again. Derek Foster dropped a thick stack of reports onto the table. "Elias, you need to see this. The internal culture at Apex is even more rotten than we thought. Hundreds of anonymous accusations were inside black employees, pushed out of premium routes. Hispanic staff reprimanded for speaking Spanish-Asian pilots, delayed in promotion reviews. Black passengers checked 3 times because they did not look like first class." Elias turned each page. His fingers tensed. His breaths grew heavier and deeper. Not because he was shocked. He had seen these things his entire life. But this time he was not just enduring. He was ending it. "You cannot fix everything alone," Maya said. Elias closed his eyes for 1 beat. "But I can begin." 1 week flowed by like a live wire underground. Shell companies were born one after another. Horizon Partners, Silverline Equity, Redwood Capital, Blue Harbor Holdings. None bore the faintest connection to Titan. No pattern, no footprints. Orders placed in tiny increments, spread across time, each transaction, dissolving into the sea of the market like grains of sand in a desert. Derek reported, "We control 3.2%. They suspect nothing," Elias replied. "Continue." But that afternoon, Lucas burst in, pale, clutching his laptop like armor. "Elias, you need to see this." A video appeared on screen. Elias being ticket-checked in front of the entire cabin. Kara Simmons's voice rang clearly. "You do not belong in first class." Passengers whispering. And in the distant corner of the frame, Richard Hale glancing over, then looking away, as if witnessing a stain on the floor. Lucas's voice shook. The clip is spreading in internal employee groups. It is only a matter of time before it leaks. The room fell silent. Elias watched the entire video. He did not blink. When it ended, he said one sentence that stunned everyone. "Do not block it." Jason raised his voice. "It will ruin our campaign. Stratosphere will be on alert." Elias shook his head. "No. People need to see the truth. And when it erupts, I will be exactly where I need to be." That night, Elias called Linda Park, a member of the Stratosphere board. She answered after 3 rings, her voice low-tired like someone who had carried too much for too long. "I heard you are interested in Stratosphere." Elias replied, "I am interested in how they treat their people." A long silence. "Then Richard Hale has blinded this company. If I have enough evidence, I will not stay silent in the boardroom." Elias looked out the window at the city, glowing like red veins. "You will have your evidence." Very soon, night fell again, and San Francisco grew quiet enough to feel the cold settle in the bones. Elias stood on his balcony, the wind tearing across his shirt. He watched Apex aircraft lift off the glow beneath their bellies, sharp like a taunt. But this time, Elias did not watch with bitterness. He watched with the clear, cold resolve of someone who knew the future with absolute certainty. "I will pull them down from the sky," he thought. Not for revenge, but to teach them how to fly the right way. In the darkness, a storm was forming, and Elias Turner was its center. Night in Chicago pressed down like a layer of black velvet, wrapping around the towering glass buildings that cast their reflections onto the cold river below. Wind from Lake Michigan whipped against steel structures as if testing the city's resolve. Inside the top-floor conference room of Titan Capital, cold white light spilled across the table, illuminating ownership charts, financial graphs, and shareholder lists scattered like the traces of a military operation. Elias Turner leaned against the edge of the table, fingers wrapped around a glass of water he never drank. His eyes were distant, looking past the glass wall toward the sleeping city, but his mind was spinning backward to the moment Kara Simmons looked him up and down as if he were an intruder in first class. Then Richard Hale's face flashed next, indifferent and cold, a symbol of everything rotten in the system. His phone buzzed. A message from Linda Park. "Hale is calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning." He knows something is wrong. Elias read it, locked the screen, and tightened his grip on the phone. Not fear. Just confirmation of what he had known from the first night. The storm had begun to form. He walked to the glass wall and pressed his palm against the icy surface. Cars below were nothing more than blurred streaks of light. The distant sky was a deep, bruised purple. Elias inhaled slowly. His resolve was no longer a reaction to an insult on a plane. It had become a defined mission strip, away the polished paint of Stratosphere Holdings, and expose the decay beneath. The next morning, Stratosphere Holdings headquarters glowed unusually bright. On the 35th floor, Richard Hale slammed a stack of documents onto the table so hard the sound cracked through the room. His face was drawn, tight eyes, red with rage and lack of sleep. Hale stood among the rows of executives like a cornered animal, still pretending to dominate. "Someone is buying our shares," he snarled. "This is not random. This is not a small investor. Someone wants to take Stratosphere. Someone wants me out." The room turned into stone. No one dared speak. They knew Hale had power, but the power of a threatened man was always more dangerous. While Hale raged, Elias sat in the Titan Capital office, one hand wrapped around a cup of black coffee, the other flipping through the reports Jason had prepared. Everything aligned like bones of the same skeleton. Restless shareholders, a rotting internal culture, incompetent leadership, and now the video. The video Hale tried to bury, but like all suppressed truths, it had found its own escape route. Elias watched the hashtags accelerating across social media without the slightest worry. Not even close. He merely exhaled softly, the kind of breath someone releases when a long, expected moment finally arrives, and they have been ready for it far longer than anyone realized. At noon, when he stepped out of the building, the Chicago wind hit him hard, sending the hem of his coat whipping behind him like a black flag raised before battle. His phone rang. Linda Park. Her voice trembled slightly, though behind that tremor was the clarity of someone seeing a storm coming from both directions. "Hale is so furious, no one dares look him in the eye," she said. "He thinks someone intentionally leaked the video. He might already be targeting you, Elias." He replied softly. "Good. A man like Hale should know who his opponent is." Linda paused, then added, "He will fight dirty. I know men like him." Elias looked up at the heavy grey sky. "So do I," he said quietly but firmly. "And I am not afraid." Night returned. The city turned steel blue again. Elias entered his high-rise apartment and switched on the kitchen light, the warm glow highlighting the sharp edges of his face. He placed the file on the table, sat down, and opened his laptop. Notifications flooded in the first news articles, speculating about a mysterious figure behind the stratosphere stock movement. Several journalists had already tracked down the video, and the more people watched it, the faster the hashtag spread. Elias read each line, each comment, each article. Silent. Not pleased, not angry. Only focused with the precision of a man who understood he now held an advantage Hale had no way to counter. He stood, stepped onto the balcony, and let the wind slice across his skin. Beneath him, Chicago blazed like a massive maze of lights. Elias looked down, hands gripping the steel railing. This city had taught him how to stand firm against every sneer, every barrier, every judgmental gaze. And now he would use those lessons to pull an empire apart, piece by piece. In the distance, an Apex aircraft was landing. The strip of lights along its body glowed through the night like a metallic beast kneeling after a long run. Elias watched it, his eyes no longer those of a man who had been insulted, but of a man who had already won. He spoke very softly, just enough for the wind to carry it away. "Hale, you chose the wrong opponent." In the night sky, Chicago swallowed the words whole and kept them like a promise of the battle that could no longer be avoided. A foggy Chicago morning filtered through the glass walls of the Titan Capitol office, casting light across charts that stretched out like a battlefield map. Elias Turner stood at the center of the room, hands on the table eyes, scanning each team member, Jason, Meyer, Derek, Lucas. No one dared move. Every step, every breath of Elias echoed louder than the blinking of the monitors. They all knew today marked the opening of a power struggle that would determine the fate of Stratosphere Holdings. The room was silent, yet every number on the screens, every financial graph, every line of data on shareholders and microtrades felt like arrows aimed at the heart of power. Elias slowly sat, opening the report Jason had just prepared. Each page he turned was evidence, a series of small, scattered trades, carefully structured to stay below the SEC threshold, gradually accumulating Stratosphere shares. Lawsuits that had been buried, internal warning emails, complaints from employees of color, ignored, all meticulously analyzed by Elias. He lifted his phone and called Linda Park, a board member. Her voice was low but firm. Hale has noticed unusual trading. He is furious. He does not know who is behind it. Elias merely smiled, eyes alight with calm authority. Correct? By the time he finds out, everything will be ready. Not long after Elias appeared at the BlackRock office in New York, facing Jordan Ellis, who controlled 8% of Stratosphere. The boardroom was wide, the light cold as steel. Jordan studied Elias for so long it felt as if time stopped. No words were needed. Both understood. Elias was not there to seek approval. He was there to form an unbreakable alliance. Not a single word was spoken, only a sharp, unwavering gaze. Finally, Jordan nodded, "I will listen." A handshake, brief without smiles, yet containing the full weight of a power shift. That evening, a leaked video appeared. Elias being asked to leave first-class Cara Simmons, standing there, her face cold, her voice clear. "You do not belong in first class." The internal social network of the airline erupted. #first class, while black, spreading journalists stirring, and Stratosphere stock beginning to waver. Elias sat quietly in the office, his gaze unchanging, breath slow and measured, controlled. He knew the power was now on his side, only awaiting the right moment to strike. He did not sleep that night. Elias stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his high-rise apartment, looking down at the blazing lights below, imagining each beam as a part of the corporation Hale believed he controlled. His hands gripped the steel railing, breath steady. Every detail, from tweets, videos, internal emails, to the slightest movement of shareholders, was within his control. He was no longer the passenger, expelled from first class. He was the one holding the advantage, preparing every step for the next move. Shortly after Elias met Samuel Hart, a pension fund advisor holding 4% of Stratosphere, at a riverside restaurant in Chicago. Warm yellow light fell on the wine glass, casting circles, like strategic ripples, spreading outward. Samuel looked directly at Elias, voice low. "You are the one in the video." Elias nodded once. "Yes." Samuel exhaled, realizing the truth. This was not someone who had been wronged, but someone preparing to deliver justice. "I will stand with you, if you give me proof," Samuel said. Elias smirked slightly, not smiling. "They will see the proof, and when the time comes, I will be in the position where Hale cannot react." Meanwhile, Hale in the Stratosphere. Holdings' boardroom was scrambling to discover who was behind the micro-trades. Eyes red face, taut as if ready to burst. He slammed his hand on the table, shouting, "Someone is trying to take my company. I do not know who they are, but I feel it." His advisors remained silent. Hale did not know that the man he was hunting was the same man once pushed from first class. The cold light reflected off the boardroom like a trap being set from all sides. Elias glanced at his laptop one final time before leaving the office, messaging the team, "Phase 2 begins." No failures allowed. Outside Chicago spun wildly. But inside Elias, everything was clear. Every path, every step, every person in the old power chain would have to face an unprecedented reality. A man once underestimated, once dismissed, now holding control from the shadows, turning humiliation into a tool to transform the entire corporation. Night fell over Chicago again, rain drizzling like scattered silver. Elias stood alone by the window, the cold wind lashing against his face. Yet in his eyes the light of victory had not yet appeared, only a smoldering flame, cold, sharp, ready to ignite. He exhaled slowly, each breath a step in the looming power struggle. Below, an Apex airplane took off its lights, running along the fuselage, like a reminder the sky does not belong to the strongest, but to the one who knows how to wield power correctly. Elias closed his eyes and whispered softly, "Hale, you think you are running the game, but you have chosen the wrong challenger." The night sky over Chicago swallowed the words whole. The storm of power was no longer a forecast. It had begun. A foggy San Francisco morning spilled over the glass towers, reflecting pale golden light onto the bustling streets below. Rays of sunlight pierced through the windows of the Titan Capitol office, illuminating Elias Turner as if shining directly onto his unannounced decisions. He stood in the center of the room, hands on the table, eyes fixed on his laptop, where stock charts danced to the rhythm of the market. Every piece of data, every trade, every shareholder movement was under his control. The room was so quiet that the clicking of keys, the rustle of paper, and Elias's even breathing could be heard. He knew that every second passing could determine whether Stratosphere Holdings would survive or sink. A deep breath, a gaze sharp as a blade, he reminded himself today, marked the beginning of a decisive turning point. Moments later, Elias called Linda Park, a board member. Her voice was low, but certain. "Hale has detected unusual trading. He is furious and preparing countermeasures." Elias smiled, eyes flashing calm confidence. "Good. By the time he realizes, everything will be in place." Without hesitation, he hung up and returned to his laptop. Streams of data from shell companies, small purchase orders, and shareholder reactions were compiled, ready for the next strike. That afternoon, Elias appeared at the BlackRock office in New York, facing Jordan Ellis, who held 8% of Stratosphere. The boardroom was vast ceiling high, the white light cold as steel. Jordan studied Elias for so long, it felt like time stopped. No words were needed. Both understood. Elias was not there to persuade, but to forge an unbreakable alliance. He spoke slowly, each word sharp, as metal. "Hale is no longer capable of leading the company. The rotten culture is dragging the stock down. I intend to change that." Jordan raised an eyebrow, then nodded, no promises made. But a silent alliance was formed. A quick handshake, no smiles, yet it confirmed the first step of the power campaign. Back in Chicago, Elias quietly monitored information flowing online. The video of him being pushed from first class spread the hashtag #FirstClass. While black surged, the press stirred, and Stratosphere stock began to fluctuate. He stood by the window, watching the streams of light from cars below, reflections on the water, forming lines like the outlines of a strategy. He was not angry, only silently observing, asserting the power of a man underestimated, yet in control of the entire board. Night fell over Chicago again, rain drizzling against the window. Elias stood alone, hands on the railing, breathing slow and steady. He knew the moment of eruption had arrived. Those who had once belittled him would now face the reality that the man they had underestimated controlled the game. Every move, every micro-trade was calculated to form a strong alliance capable of overwhelming the current board and forcing Hale to recognize where true power lay. Shortly after Elias met Samuel Hart, a pension fund advisor, holding 4% of Stratosphere at a riverside restaurant. The golden light hit the wine glass, casting circles like strategic ripples expanding outward. Samuel looked directly at Elias, voice low but sharp. "You are the one in the video." Elias nodded slightly. "Yes." Samuel exhaled, realizing the truth. This was not a man wronged, but a man preparing to deliver justice. "I will stand with you, if you give me proof." Samuel said. Elias smirked, not smiling. They will see the proof. And when the time comes, I will be in the position where Hale cannot react. Meanwhile, Hale in the Stratosphere Holdings boardroom shouted, slamming his hand on the table face, red with fury. Who is buying our shares? I know they want control, but I do not know who. His advisors remained silent, unaware that the person he was hunting was the same man once pushed from first class. The cold white light reflected across the room, forming a trap Elias had already set. Elias paused for a moment before his laptop screen, messaging the team, Phase 2 begins. No one is allowed to fail. Outside Chicago continued its rhythm, but in Elias's mind, everything was clear. Every step, every action, everyone in the old chain of power would have to face the man they once underestimated. A man once judged, now controlling from the shadows, turning humiliation into a tool to transform the entire corporation. Night fell rain streaking silver across the streets. Elias stood by the window, cold wind lashing his face, yet in his eyes burned a quiet, sharp flame ready to ignite, each breath a step preparing for the final strike. Below, an Apex airplane took off lights running along its fuselage, like a reminder the sky belongs not to the strongest, but to the one who knows how to wield power correctly. Elias closed his eyes, smiling faintly. Hale, you think you are running the game, but you have chosen the wrong challenger. The night sky over Chicago swallowed the words whole. The storm of power was no longer a forecast. It had begun. A foggy morning in Chicago filtered through the windows of the 42nd floor of Titan Capital, casting pale golden light across the stock charts, strewn on the table like a battlefield map. Elias Turner stood at the center of the room, hands resting on the table eyes, sweeping over the team Jason Meyer, Derek Lucas. No one moved. Everyone knew today was the day the battle would ignite. He pressed a button on his laptop. The small incremental trades from the shell companies had been sent overnight. Each transaction was timed according to market fluctuations, carefully staying below the SEC reporting threshold. Each small share accumulated into a massive force enough to control Stratosphere Holdings. Elias watched the data dance across the screen, his gaze cold as steel, not from anger, but from authority. His phone rang. Linda Park, a board member, spoke with a low, steady voice. Hale has detected unusual trading. He is furious and preparing emergency measures. Elias smiled, eyes flashing calm confidence. Good. By the time he realizes, everything will be ready. He hung up and returned to the laptop, ensuring every calculation, every detail was precise. That afternoon, Elias arrived at the BlackRock office in New York to meet Jordan Ellis, who held 8% of Stratosphere. The boardroom was wide ceilings high, the white light cold as steel, the table glossy. Jordan studied Elias for so long, it felt like time had stopped. Elias was not there to persuade, but to forge an alliance. He spoke slowly, each word sharp as metal. Hale is no longer capable of leading. The rotten culture is dragging the stock down. I am here to change that. Jordan raised an eyebrow, then nodded, no promises made. Yet a silent alliance was formed. A quick handshake enough to confirm that the first phase of the power campaign had succeeded. Back in Chicago, Elias tracked the leaked video online. The footage of him being pushed from first class spread rapidly, the hashtag first class. While Black went viral, the press stirred, and Stratosphere stock began to fluctuate. He stood by the window, eyes focused, not angry, only observing. Every detail from tweets, videos, internal emails to shareholder actions was under his control. He knew the power was now his, only awaiting the right moment to strike. Night fell over Chicago, rain tapping lightly against the windows. Elias stood alone, hands gripping the steel railing, breathing slow and even, each breath a step in preparation for the next move. An Apex airplane took off, lights along its fuselage, shining like a reminder: the sky does not belong to the strongest, but to the one who knows how to wield power correctly. He closed his eyes, smiling faintly. Hale, you think you are running the game, but you have chosen the wrong challenger. He then organized an emergency meeting with his full team. Jason presented reports, analyzing every shareholder movement. Maya updated legal vulnerabilities and company structures. Derek monitored the shell companies. Lucas tracked real-time market reactions. Every step was meticulously calculated. Each click, each trade, each shareholder communication orchestrated like a perfect symphony. Elias stood at the center, eyes on the screen, voice deep but sharp. Everything is on track. Phase 2. We move on the dissatisfied shareholders. When they see proof that Hale does not control the company, they will side with us. Night descended Chicago. Silent, yet in Elias's mind, the battle roared. He looked down at the streets, the blinking lights reflecting a web of power. Each light was a share, each move a strategy. He knew Hale would strike back, but Elias was prepared for every scenario. Every breath, every decision, every movement in the plan was calculated and no detail overlooked. Elias closed his eyes for a moment, inhaled deeply, feeling power gathering in his fingers. He was ready for the direct confrontation, with Hale ready to control stratosphere from the shadows, turning every insult, every slight into a tool to transform the entire corporation. The Chicago sky swallowed his gaze. The storm of power was no longer a forecast. It had begun. Today the battle was officially ignited. Morning light poured through the windows of the 42nd floor of Titan Capital, casting pale golden rays across the stock charts, scattered like a battlefield map. Elias Turner stood at the center of the room, hands on the table, eyes sharp and cold as he scanned the team. Jason, Maya, Derek, Lucas. Everything was ready. Every micro-trade, every shell company, every covert call with shareholders, all connected into a perfect network of power. He knew that even the slightest mistake could collapse the entire plan. But Elias had calculated everything. That very morning, the stock purchases continued. Jason monitored market data. Maya reviewed the legal structure of each shell company. Derek tracked shareholder reactions. Lucas observed anomalies in real time. Every move was fast, precise, like a symphony charged with power. Elias stood in the center, eyes glued to the screen, breathing steady, silent. Yet his gaze spoke volumes. Every step was under control. Across the city, Richard Hale began noticing irregularities. In the Stratosphere boardroom, he stood among his advisors, face flushed with anger, eyes fixed on stock charts. What are they doing? Who is buying our shares? Hale roared, slamming his hand on the table. The advisors remained silent. Hale sensed imminent danger, yet he did not know that the person behind it was the same man once pushed from first class. Every move, every plan of Elias was tightly sealed, leaving Hale completely off balance. Elias called Linda Park, a Stratosphere board member. Watch closely. When they see proof that Hale has lost control, they will side with us. Linda exhaled, sensing the absolute resolve in Elias's voice. He needed no further explanation. Everyone in the room knew the power battle had entered its critical phase. That afternoon, Elias met Jordan Ellis at the BlackRock office, who held 8% of Stratosphere. The boardroom was wide-ceiling, high white light, cold as steel, the table glossy. Jordan studied Elias for so long it felt like time stopped. Elias was not there to persuade, but to establish an alliance. He spoke slowly, each word sharp, as Steel Hale no longer has the ability to lead. The company culture is rotten, the stock declining. I am here to change that. Jordan raised an eyebrow, then nodded, no promises made. Yet the gaze confirmed the alliance had formed. A quick handshake enough to signal that the first step of the power campaign was successful. Returning to Chicago, Elias monitored the leaked video online. The footage of him being pushed from first class spread the hashtag #FirstClass. While Black went viral, the press stirred and Stratosphere stock began to swing. He stood by the window, gaze fully focused. He knew the power was now in his hands, only awaiting the moment to strike. Every detail, from tweets, videos, internal emails to shareholder actions, was calculated and controlled. Night fell over Chicago, rain drizzling against the window. Elias stood alone, hands gripping the steel railing, breathing steady each breath, a step preparing for the final strike. Below, an Apex airplane took off lights running along its fuselage, like a reminder the sky does not belong to the strongest, but to the one who knows how to wield power correctly. He closed his eyes, smiling faintly. Hale, you think you are running the game, but you have chosen the wrong challenger. In the following hours, Elias began directly calling and meeting dissatisfied shareholders, those who had questioned Hale's competence. Each meeting was meticulously prepared, transparent data, legal evidence, profit projections, if governance changed. These shareholders began shifting their stance from hesitation to support. The alliance network formed quickly power, gradually pressing on Hale, who remained unaware. Late at night, Elias stood again by the window, looking at the city lights reflecting in the rain. A storm of power was forming from silent steps, from small but precise trades. Hale would not react in time. Everything had been calculated from the video spreading shareholder reactions to the acquisition trades. Elias inhaled deeply, smiled, feeling power flowing through his fingers. He was no longer underestimated. He was the one holding the advantage, preparing to strike. The Chicago sky swallowed his gaze. The storm of power was no longer a forecast. It had begun. Every next move would reshape the entire Stratosphere Holdings landscape, and Elias Turner knew by the time Hale realized it would already be too late. Morning light poured through the windows of the 42nd floor of Titan Capital, casting pale golden reflections across the stock charts spread on the table like a battlefield map. Elias Turner stood at the center of the room, hands on the table, eyes fixed on his laptop. Every data line, every small trade, every shareholder reaction was tracked with precision, like a heartbeat, like arrows aimed directly at the center of power. The room was so silent that the clicking of keys, the rustle of paper, and the steady breaths of each team member could be heard. Jason monitored market data. Maya reviewed the legal structure of each shell company. Derek tracked shareholder reactions. Lucas observed market signals in real time. Every move, every click was calculated meticulously. Elias stood at the center, eyes sharp as knives, breathing steady, his cold composure, creating an invisible pressure that demanded absolute silence. Meanwhile, across the city, Richard Hale at Stratosphere Holdings began noticing irregularities. Stock charts fluctuated, internal reports flagged anomalies, and shell companies were buying shares in small increments that no one could anticipate. He roared in the boardroom, slamming his hand on the table. Who is doing this? Who is behind these trades? His advisors remained silent, eyes shifting. Hale had no idea that the person orchestrating this was Elias, the same man who had been pushed out of first class. Every move, every plan of Elias was tightly sealed, leaving Hale completely reactive. Elias called Linda Park a board member. Monitor everything. When they see that Hale has lost control, they will side with us. Her voice was low and certain. You've prepared for this. Elias merely smiled, eyes flashing confidence. They will see who holds the power. That afternoon, Elias met with major shareholders, Jordan Ellis, Samuel Hart, and other dissatisfied investors. Each meeting had been prepared meticulously transparent. Data, legal evidence, profit projections, if governance changed. Shareholders who had once hesitated now began siding with Elias. The power network formed like a river, sweeping away every defense Hale thought he had in place. Night fell over Chicago, rain drizzling streetlights reflecting on the wet pavement like the spreading web of power. Elias stood by the window, hands on the steel railing, breathing, steady eyes ablaze. He imagined every minor move of the shareholders, every click, every small acquisition trade combining into immense power. Finally, the turning point arrived. Reports from the shell companies confirmed Elias had accumulated nearly 25% of Stratosphere's voting shares. Hale received the news through his assistant. His face turned pale, hands, trembling, voice sharp. How did they do it? Impossible. Who is behind this? Elias did not react immediately. He stood in the Titan Capital office, watching the data stream across the screen, smiling. Every path, every advance was under his control. Hale was now reactive, while Elias held complete authority. A silent strike from the shadows was forcing Hale to realize the world had changed, and the man once underestimated now held the advantage. Night fell again over Chicago. Elias stood alone, the cold wind lashing his face, yet his eyes burned steadily. Every breath, each preparatory step, every acquisition order was a blade aimed at the old power. Below, an Apex airplane took off lights along its fuselage, shining like a reminder. The sky does not belong to the strongest, but to the one who knows how to wield power correctly. Elias closed his eyes, smiling, knowing that when Hale realized it would already be too late. The storm of power was no longer a forecast. It had erupted. Early morning light in Chicago poured through the towering glass buildings, reflecting pale golden rays onto the river, like thousands of arrows of power ready to strike. On the 42nd floor of Titan Capital, Elias Turner stood before the screen eyes, unwavering. On the Stratosphere Holdings stock chart, the small trades from his shell companies had now consolidated enough to control nearly 50% of the voting power. Every move, every transaction was timed to the second. He knew that at this moment, no boardroom, no board of directors could stop him. Across the city, Richard Hale stood frozen in the Stratosphere boardroom, hands, trembling, face pale. He watched the lines of market data shareholders were beginning to turn silent alliances, shifting in Elias's favor. Hale realized that all the power he once held was being constricted, and the person behind it was the man he had underestimated. Every plan, every defense, every strategy he had laid out suddenly became useless. Elias called Linda Park a board member, voice calm but sharp. Everything is ready. When they hold the special shareholder meeting, they will side with us. Linda exhaled and nodded, fully aware of the impact of the strike Elias had been preparing silently for weeks. Elias smiled, eyes flashing confidence. They will see who holds the power. By the afternoon, Elias met with the major shareholders, Jordan Ellis, Samuel Hart, and other dissatisfied investors. Each meeting was meticulously prepared, transparent data, legal evidence projected profits if governance changed. Shareholders who had hesitated began to side with Elias. The power network formed like a river, sweeping away every defense Hale thought was in place. Night fell over Chicago, rain lightly tapping the windows, streetlights reflecting on the water, like a network of power spreading. Elias stood by the glass hands on the steel railing, breathing steady, eyes ablaze. He imagined every minor movement of the shareholders, every click, every small acquisition trade forming immense power. Finally, the turning point arrived. Reports from the shell companies confirmed Elias had accumulated enough shares to control nearly 25% of Stratosphere's voting power. Hale received the information through his assistant. His face went pale, hands, trembling voice sharp. How did they do it? Impossible. Who is behind this? Elias did not react immediately. He stood in the Titan Capital office, watching the data stream across the screen, smiling. Every path, every advance was under his control. Hale was now reactive, while Elias held complete authority. A silent strike from the shadows forced Hale to realize the world had changed, and the man once underestimated now held the advantage. Night fell again over Chicago. Elias stood alone, wind lashing against his face, yet his eyes burned steadily. Every breath, each preparatory step, every acquisition trade was a blade aimed at the old power. Below, an Apex airplane took off lights along its fuselage, shining like a reminder: the sky does not belong to the strongest, but to the one who knows how to wield power correctly. Elias closed his eyes for a moment, inhaled deeply. He had completed the takeover, reversed the power, and proven that patience, strategy, and unshakable composure were the keys to changing an entire system. The man once underestimated now stood at the pinnacle, not only owning the corporation, but also setting a new standard for corporate culture and equitable opportunity within the industry. Every insult, every slight had now become a tool for change, and Elias Turner, through strategy, intelligence, and determination, had turned disregarded power into undeniable strength. Looking back over the entire journey of Elias Turner, it becomes clear that true power does not come from titles, appearances, or temporary wealth. It arises from the ability to observe, analyze, and choose actions, strategically remaining steadfast in the face of challenges and injustice. Elias demonstrated that confronting bias does not always require shouting or anger. Sometimes lasting change comes from quiet yet precise steps, from turning personal slights into tools to transform an entire system. His strategy not only allowed him to take control of a corporation, but also redefined corporate culture, proving that fairness, respect, and efficiency can coexist. The business world and society as a whole will always evolve when those with patience, intelligence, and courage rise not just for themselves, but for values that transcend the individual. This is a lesson in the power of strategy, persistence, and the ability to turn challenges into opportunities to reshape an entire system. If this story inspires you, do not forget to like and subscribe to follow other journeys where power and justice intersect. Before leaving the video, leave a comment with the word "victory" to share that you also believe persistence and strategy can change the world.